Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a little special. I am going to give a bunch of informations about some very recent events about the Dead Space franchise and its future. But I quickly want to go over my personal relationship with the franchise and the reasons why it kinda died for a few years. I am not the greatest fan of horror games. Though I do not dislike horror itself, I generally prefer when non-horror oriented games include elements of horror. That being said, there is one horror franchise I am completely fond of, the Dead Space franchise. Dead Space games offered a very special version of horror. First of all, you are not defenseless in these games. Most of what could scare you can be butchered with the very impressive arsenal you have at your disposal. There is also no real UI, as all the elements that could constitute a classic UI exist in the Dead Space universe. Your life bar is a tube on the back of the character's armor, your ammunition counter is displayed on the weapons, and the inventory is an augmented reality interface your character uses in the game. That allows for a very high level of immersion for a third-person game. Dead Space 1 and 2 had also a very well designed environments in the sense that they were practical and believable. The excellent sound design was also a great part in making these games the wonders they were. But what happened to Dead Space? Well, let's just say that the development of Dead Space 3 was a huge mess, caused by conflicts between the will of the devs and Electronic Arts, which had bought Visceral Games, the studio that created Dead Space in the first place. Dead Space 3 was a more action-focused game, which on some points looked like a clear downgrade compared to Dead Space 2. Especially when it came to the story and the environment interactions. The game is not as bad as some people say, though, as the co-op was pretty interesting and fun overall. And also the soundtrack in this third game is quite good and gives a more cinematic vibe to the game. The DLC of the third game was a real scam though. There is not much more to say about Dead Space 3 as most of it has already been said over the years. Dead Space 4 never came out and Visceral Game was closed by Electronic Arts. For quite some time, most Dead Space fans thought the concept and experience provided by this specific franchise was gone for good. But in the recent years, some projects have started to come out, and it looks like 2022 and 2023 will be good years for the Dead Space enjoyers like me. I am quickly going to talk about 3 games that will come out relatively soon and that are a real resurrection of the Dead Space formula. The first one is the Callisto Protocol. It will be the first to come out with a release date announced for the 2nd of December 2022. A nice Christmas gift for all Dead Space fans. This game is developed by Striking Distance Studio. A very good starting point for this studio, as it was founded by Glenn Schofield, the creator of the Dead Space franchise. The game seems to have all the elements that made Dead Space the incredible experience it was. A space-themed survival horror game with no traditional UI. It is the closest spiritual successor to Dead Space 1, and it really feels like if Glenn Schofield still had the franchise, it would have been a Dead Space reboot. I can't wait to get my hands on this one, as it really looks amazing and the teasers are very promising. The second one, and probably the most surprising, is the Dead Space 1 remake. We started hearing from this in 2020, and I really did not expect this game to release very soon, but we just learned that it was going to be released on the 27th of January 2023. I was expecting this remake to be released in 2024, but it seems they went way faster than expected. The images again look very promising and the demo they shared with a new dismemberment system looks amazing. It feels like Motive, the studio dispatched by Electronic Arts to work on this remake, really understands what made the success of the original. We do not have that much more information about this remake, but the devs mentioned that it would be a bit more than a remake, as this new version could include some new story elements, and the game could be longer overall. They modified some elements of gameplay that were getting really outdated, like the no gravity zones. In the first game, the player just hopped from surface to surface, but in the remake it seems like they included the no gravity system from Dead Space 2, where you just Iron Man your way through the emptiness of space. A really promising remake, but I hope does not kill the Dead Space franchise again. I am still not very confident in EA's ability to revive the Dead Space game, but there is finally some hope they might do something right. The last game I want to talk about is Negative Atmosphere. This is probably the less known game of the list, but this one has been around for quite some time. It is being developed by Sunscorch Studio, an indie game company working on this Dead Space inspired game. As the previous title, it has the same ideas at its core. No invasive UI, a space survival horror game with disgusting monsters. However, Negative Atmosphere features a unique choice system that will affect the character's mental state. The focus on psychological effects of horror is more important in this game compared to the others. There is no release date yet for this game, but the devs give regular updates on the progress they make through social media. This one is really different from the two others, as it is not a big AAA company, but an indie game project financed by fan support. The images are really promising and I can't wait to get more showcases of the gameplay for this game. That will be it for this video. I hope these 3 games will succeed, so more games like this end up being released, as I really think Dead Space brought a very unique formula to the horror genre. I will be covering the Callisto Protocol on the channel, so stay tuned for more. If you like this video, don't hesitate to subscribe, as you might get interested in future content. I'll see you again, bye.